The Invisible Enemy. My thoughts. Hello and welcome to this week's video. This week I wanted to talk to you about the most recent Doctor Who story that I watched, which was The Invisible Enemy. Last week actually. I've started kind of season 15 on Blu-ray a few weeks back. I watched Fang Rock, which is I loved. I haven't done a video on that because I did a video on Fang Rock a year or so back for Halloween, so there didn't seem to be much point doing it again. But this time around, I waited a fortnight and I ended up watching another one from season 15, which was The Invisible Enemy. Obviously, I've seen it before, not as many times as Fang Rock, it has to be said. The Invisible Enemy is an odd one. It's not one It's certainly not a classic, and it's certainly not one of my favourites. It's been a while since I've watched it. I think I enjoyed it more this time than I have previously, but it's still very flawed. And it's kind of a shame because I think there's a better story in there trying to get out. And there's some good moments. Part 1 is actually very good. It's a very good kind of part 1 opening episode. It's quite strong. It's atmospheric. There's lots of shadows. It's all, on the thing with people being taken over. It's all good stuff. Part 2 starts off okay. And obviously you enjoy the introduction of K9. Love K9. Kind of starts going downhill. I think the irony of The Invisible Enemy is that it's the worst and weakest thing about it is the thing that I think it was pitched as, which is basically Doctor Who does Fantastic Voyage, because that is easily the weakest and worst part of the story. The virus stuff, taking people over, all that stuff, that's fine. The worst part of the story is the whole shrinking down the... It's so dumb. I mean, they haven't got the budget for it, but really, it's just so dumb and it's dull. It doesn't work again and again. I think the other problem with it, what makes it even worse, is I haven't seen Fantastic Voyage, but I'm fairly certain that's not what happens in Fantastic Voyage. If it is, I mean, Inner Space was a take on that as well, isn't it? And it's shrinking people down, going into somebody else's body to try and save them. The problem with this is they're trying to have their cake and eat it, because the whole cloning thing just does not work at all and raises kind of some disturbing kind of... Because it's the Doctor and Leela, but it's not the Doctor and Leela, even though it is, but they've only got like 5 minutes to live. They're connected, and yet at the same time they're separate. It's not like... I mean, it might work better if they were just like, almost like flesh, the Rebel Flesh avatars or something, and it was our Doctor and Leela controlling them. And then just when those bodies died, it didn't make any difference because their consciousness came back to their real bodies. As it is, it's like it's them, but it's not them. They're actually separate, which means you've created these things to die in 10 minutes. It's a bit disturbing, and it's also a bit silly. It might have been better if it was, I don't know. Actually, I think it might have been better if they just didn't do it, because I think the whole thing's just very silly. They haven't got the budget for it, and it's kind of dull. Because of this, part 3 is definitely the worst of the 4, and the best bits of part 3 are the bits taking place on the medical base with Leela and K9 and the possessed crew members running around. All the stuff inside the Doctor's body with the clones is just... It's just boring and it's dumb. You just don't believe it, and so you're disconnected. Part 4 is better. It's still not as good as part 1. Its main problem is it's really let down by the Nucleus costume, which is just really shit and really ludicrous. And it seems like the prawn look was actually deliberate, considering that Tom actually refers to it as a crustacean. It really lets it down, because otherwise part 4 is not bad. I don't know, I think this probably would have worked better as a 3-parter, cutting out the whole Fantastic Voyage shit. It probably would have been fine, and giving a better costume for the Nucleus, it would have been fine. As it is, this is not one of my favourites. It's one of the weakest of the era and of the season. It's not the worst of the season. That's Underworld. I'm really looking forward to rewatching that soon. if I can even make it through the whole thing, which has been a rarity for me. That being said, as with like stuff like Revenge of the Cybermen and Planet of the Daleks in the last couple of years for me, these stories I've never been particularly fond of, they still look great compared to what we've got now. You know, this is mediocre Doctor Who. I wouldn't go so far as to call it bad Doctor Who, because there's lots of good elements to it. It just doesn't really work. Mediocre Doctor Who, still better than whatever shite it is we've had spewed onto the screen for the last 7 years at least. You have to kind of, you know, it's almost like it goes up an extra point. Because you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's not that great, but it could be worse. It could be this shit, you know. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Invisible Enemy this time around. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It's watchable. I'd watch it again sometime. It's Tom. You can't really go that wrong. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye for now. Comment!